kind of who we are, what we do. I also want to talk about the whys of Taproot. So why does Taproot exist? Because I think that has a lot to do with kind of how we run our programs and gives you a better understanding of how we run our programs. I'll also touch on the 5 principles of working with skilled volunteers, or pro bono consultants, as we'd like to call them. Taproot's programming is all about getting you as nonprofit leaders in touch with skilled volunteers, pro bono consultants who can help build capacity at your organization. We think there are really kind of 5 ground principles that everyone should think about when working with skilled volunteers at during a Taproot program, or any other program for that matter, or any other organization that might be facilitating intermediary support between nonprofit leaders and skilled volunteers. We then will also meet with a nonprofit leader who has actually used our online program, Taproot Plus, and she is going to share her insights, her work at her organization, how she's leveraged the support of skilled volunteers and pro bono business professionals to build capacity at her organization. We love bringing on nonprofit guests because oftentimes they say it even better than we can. Then we'll talk about the specifics of, if you're not familiar with Taproot Plus or want to learn more about how you can start doing that as well. We'll talk about how you can tap into pro bono support through Taproot Plus, our online marketplace. And I'll hook you up with some examples of the type of support that you can get done on a pro bono basis. It can be really helpful in clarifying, okay, what is it actually, what do capacity building projects look like? What make good pro bono engagements for one-on-one capacity building? So without further ado, now that we've laid out the agenda, and we will have a Q&A at the end where we try to answer your questions, I just want to introduce you all really quick to the basics of Taproot and who we are. So Taproot was founded ourselves as a nonprofit in 2001, with the knowledge that there is a massive resource gap present in the social sector. So organizations who may well have the solutions to our world's most pressing social challenges simply do not have the financial means or staff capacity to carry out their missions to their fullest extent. So Taproot aims to democratize access to resources for nonprofits, regardless of their mission area, budget size, or a number of years that they've been in operations. And I just want to give you all a quick cross-section of impact and our stats about everything we've done. So since the early 2000s, Taproot's been able to partner with over 10,000 social change organizations and 24,000 volunteers, totaling over $300 million in donated professional services to nonprofits. We aim to forge hundreds of pro bono connections every week through Taproot Plus, our free-to-use volunteer nonprofit matchmaking platform, which we'll dive into a little bit later. In addition to our community-led programming through Taproot Plus, our nonprofit has also partnered with over 100 Fortune 500 companies through our advisory services branch to bring talented corporate employee workers to nonprofits directly across Taproot's network. So through the Taproot Plus platform, we've aimed to lower all barriers to entry for organizations just starting out or looking to grow further through capacity building. Something I also like to emphasize is Taproot ourselves, we are a nonprofit. So we also use pro bono support from skilled volunteers. Working with skilled volunteers is a really great way for emerging nonprofits to build infrastructure and also develop the muscles, so to speak, of scoping out projects in managing external contractors and business professionals, which throughout your career as a nonprofit professional, you will be doing more and more. So whether you're just starting out or looking to grow your organization even further, pro bono support from business professionals, I think, plays a role. It's a great way for more established organizations also to demonstrate flexibility, agility, and frugality to potential partners and potential funders. So even if your organization is very well staffed and you have your own marketing department and HR department, we still believe that pro bono support can play a role in demonstrating that you're going beyond just fundraising to resource raising. So we're not just for new nonprofits just starting out, we're for all nonprofits. We think pro bono support and the pro bono ethic should be leveraged, throughout a nonprofit's entire journey. So now I want to touch on the whys of Taproot. So I've talked a little bit about this already, but I like talking about why Taproot Foundation was established in the first place, because I think it can help lay the groundwork for nonprofits to understand our approach, but also how you as nonprofit leaders should be thinking about skilled volunteerism. So one of the primary reasons Taproot was founded was to help democratize access to consulting resources for nonprofits. Traditionally, these types of resources have been gatekept or paywalled, as you probably already know, which bars thousands of nonprofits with smaller budgets from getting the support they need. Nonprofits are often also founded by very passionate people who might be jumping into the role of institutional leader for the very first time in their careers. So if you're not someone with a fancy MBA or experience in the consulting world or the world of professional services, it's really easy to misidentify or misdiagnose needs and the skills required to actually tackle them. Additionally, people with those fancy MBAs and consulting experience are pro bono consultants, are skilled volunteers. We use that kind of interchangeably. These people are very passionate about giving back, but oftentimes they're very unsure about where or how to do that. Believe it or not, there just aren't a lot of spaces where this kind of work is facilitated and happens. So we pride ourselves on being a leadership in the intermediary space. And finally, we found that when nonprofits do correctly identify their needs, sometimes they struggle with turning those needs into actionable projects with clearly defined deliverables and an end goal in mind. This can lead to what we call scope creep, where project goals keep ballooning out and where a simple graphic design project can all of a sudden turn into a graphic overhaul of all your marketing collateral and social media content strategy with no clear end to the project in sight. So helping to alleviate all of these difficulties really remains the cornerstone of what Taproot Foundation does. And I want you to keep them in mind when thinking about your own efforts to engage skilled volunteers from the business world. All these challenges are still relevant, I think, even to seasoned nonprofit professionals. So again, relevant no matter where you are in the nonprofit journey. Now that we've gone over why Taproot exists, I want to cover what we like to call our 5 core principles for working with skilled volunteers. We believe these 5 principles are relevant for any pro bono project or engagement with skilled volunteers, whether you're getting the help through a Taproot facilitated program or anywhere else. So these apply, we think, across the board and are just best practices for leveraging pro bono consultants and skilled volunteers. Number 1, maybe the golden rule of pro bono, as we like to call it. Approach projects that are done on a volunteer basis like you would a paid partnership with a vendor or contractor. Both parties should commit to deadlines, give direct and honest feedback, and hold each other accountable for project goals. You, as the project leader, should hold your internal team accountable for setting up your volunteer for success. Take the prep work seriously. Invest time internally before the project to gather necessary feedback, materials, and buy-in from all the people who will be needed to make the project a success. Before sourcing skilled volunteers for any project, make sure you have this relevant board and staff buy-in so that you're ready to hit the ground running. No one on your team should be surprised that you're bringing in a consultant to work with the organization. Now, some nonprofits tend to believe that they should just accept whatever their skilled volunteer gives them because, hey, they're volunteers. However, we found that if you really push for high quality work, more often than not, the volunteer will rise to the occasion. The project is going to affect your bottom line as a nonprofit, which is your mission, whether it's paid or donated. So keep that in mind. And similarly, for the skilled volunteer, this project is going to be part of their work history, their CV, their resume. They want to provide you with the best possible service and will appreciate actionable feedback to improve the final product. So at the end of the day, everyone wants to feel great about the work they did. And holding yourself, your team, and your skill volunteer accountable for developing a high quality deliverable, an end goal for your project, helps keep everyone motivated throughout the project and really genuinely proud of the outcome. So core principle number 2, know and identify your needs. This sounds simple, but can actually be more difficult than you think. And our advice is not to rush this part. Take time to assess your challenges with your team. Try to look for root causes rather than just symptoms. Define the problem clearly, and then maybe try and develop a proposed solution based off of your own knowledge. Your proposed project should usually center around a core skill set. Sometimes bigger initiatives might require multiple skill sets at play, which might mean partnering with more than one skilled volunteer on multiple projects. So, for example, if your organization is creating your first ever annual report, you might tap one volunteer to handle the graphic design element of that and formatting to, give the layout and the visual quality of the document, and another volunteer to create the copy and key messages that are actually going to go into the text of your annual report. So it's easy to think about something like an annual report as one complete project in and of itself, but it would actually be better looked at as several discrete projects contributing to the overall goal of creating this annual report. So when initially designing your project, work with your team to create an implementation plan for whatever end product or goal your skilled volunteer is going to help you deliver. Setting expectations on how staff members can use this product or deliverable will get people across your nonprofit excited about the project as well. When you're thinking about your own needs, try and map these solutions that you're coming up with, these potential projects, back to your organization's priorities. This will set you up to make a compelling and substantive pitch to a volunteer applicant in the future. This is really the cornerstone of your project. So make sure that the premise is strong. And finally, think about any of the pre-work that needs to get done. So if you're interested in working with a data analyst, for example, do you have the relevant data scrubbed and ready to go? When mapping out these dependencies and what needs to be done first, you might realize that you have a different project than the one you were initially thinking. And that can be really, really helpful in figuring out what type of project to pitch to a skilled volunteer first. Number 3, get the right resource for the right job. You want to vet prospective skilled volunteers like you would anyone applying to work at your organization. Ask for CV and resume, references, and examples of prior work if applicable to your project. It's even completely appropriate to have the volunteer sign a memorandum of understanding or a volunteer agreement of some kind. Some projects might require the provider to sign a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA, or a confidentiality agreement. Again, that is perfectly reasonable, especially with things like HR projects. Make sure that they not only have the requisite skill set that you're looking for, but that they are a good culture fit at your organization as well. Do they understand your organization's mission, vision, and programs? Are they open to co-managing this project with you? Are they open to giving and receiving direct and honest feedback? Will they be able to contribute successfully in a virtual environment? Most pro bono projects are done virtually. So that's also something to consider. Is this person obviously tech savvy enough to work in a virtual environment with you? And remember, a skilled volunteering project is not just a giveaway, it's a partnership. You're working on the project together. So you want to take the time really to find the right partner. When you use our online marketplace, Taproot Plus, which we'll talk about shortly, you'll have the opportunity to link up with potential skilled volunteers beforehand to make sure they're a good fit. So we're all about helping you source skilled volunteers to bring in and actually interview to see if they would be a good fit for the project that you're looking to get help on. 4, be realistic about deadlines. You'll want to be very thoughtful about the projects you choose with regard to timeline. Even small tasks can take longer than expected when working with an external party. So your volunteer will need time to learn about your organization, share updates, and receive feedback. Active communication lines between your nonprofit and the volunteer are really key to success. So what we recommend here to think about is skilled volunteering is rarely a good solution for urgent needs. And the reason for this is skilled volunteers oftentimes have their own full-time jobs. They're either volunteering for you after hours or on the weekends. And this can necessarily lengthen rounds of communication, rounds of feedback, review, things like that. This is one of the trade-offs of free support, is that these partnerships typically have extended timelines. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. And that is true, again, whether you're getting support through a Taproot program or anywhere else on a pro bono basis. So if you have a critical need that is a hard deadline coming up really fast and is maybe like a flashing red alarm light, and it's make or break for your organization, consider cultivating other avenues outside of skilled volunteer support for that as well. We'll never discourage you from considering pro bono for that, but you'll want to be very, very cognizant of the extended timeline of most pro bono projects, and just keep that in mind when sourcing people for needs, especially if they are urgent. And then finally, number 5, learning goes both ways. You and your volunteer are experts in your own fields. Try and embrace that. Your volunteer partner will need to learn a lot about your organization and cause area to make the project a success. So be prepared to get them up to speed. Background knowledge or issue area education that you take for granted might be completely new information for them. So you should also enter partnerships ready to learn. If you find that after input from a volunteer, the project's final product or what you thought might be the end goal of the product changes from what you originally envisioned, that's perfectly fine. You want to try not to be overly prescriptive when pitching your organization's need to a prospective volunteer. Leave some room for their perspective to inform the final project scope, as there could be important details that you might not know about or overlook. And it's really, really important to schedule regular check-ins and create a space to both give and receive feedback to your volunteer, and make room for this learning. Both the nonprofit beneficiary and skilled volunteer should aim to be students and teachers kind of at the same time. So now that we've talked a little bit about our 5 principles for all pro bono engagements, and before we jump into using our online service, Taproot Plus, and how to do that, I want to take a few minutes to talk with an actual nonprofit leader about projects that they've engaged on with skilled volunteers. So I want to welcome into the presentation Kristen Johnson. And Kristen, again, we have 2 Kristens on the call here, both with the Kristens with an E. But Kristen Johnson is a 2011 graduate of Winston-Salem University with a degree in information technology. Over the past 12 years, she's worked in various IT roles at a Fortune 200 company. She furthered her education with a master's in business from Virginia Commonwealth University, specializing in global marketing management. Kristen is driven by her passion for higher education, HBCUs, financial literacy, and philanthropy. Together with her husband, Rufus, they founded a nonprofit in 2020. A daring time to found a nonprofit, given the pandemic, called KR Scholars. Their mission is to support and empower underserved communities by providing scholarships, financial literacy, and workforce readiness programs for students attending or planning to attend historically Black colleges and universities. So I want to give a big, warm welcome to Kristen, and thank you so much for joining us to talk about your experience. So first of all, I just want to ask, tell us about KR Scholars. Tell us about your organization. What's your mission? Who do you serve? Give us your elevator pitch, as we like to say.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Joshua. And thanks for the opportunity to share more about organization. As you mentioned, my husband and I founded KR Scholars, which is a nonprofit focused on promoting higher education at historically Black colleges and universities for low income students, specifically Black and Brown students. I mean, we do that through a couple of key strategic pillars. The first is around scholarships. So we have our annual scholarship program called Dollars for HBCU Scholars. And the goal of that is really to make education more accessible and affordable, equitable for communities of color and people in low to moderate income areas. Our second pillar is around financial literacy, where we work to provide a financial foundation and framework for students on topics like budgeting, savings, investments, credit, really as an opportunity to bridge the wealth gap and empower students that may not have had that information for it to be presented to them in a way that they can interpret it and work to develop those life skills. And that's done through our HBCU Money Masters program. And lastly, we have a program related to campus to career, and that's around career readiness, where we really try to expose students to economically mobile career paths and opportunities that they may not be aware of, and whether in tech and STEM or doctors, lawyers, as well as helping them to nurture soft skills so that they can land on their dream job. All of this is done with the purpose of helping them to thrive after graduation.
Yeah, and you're getting some shout outs in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you,
People
guys.
who are excited about your mission. um, but yeah, so I mean, everyone has their reason for engaging skilled volunteers as nonprofit leaders. What kind of specifically led you to actively seek out skill volunteer kind of pro bono support? And what led you maybe to Taproot? Kind of how did you hear about us? Talk
Sure.
about like the genesis of that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an excellent question. What I'll say is that our organization was very grassroots. As you mentioned, we started in 2020 during the pandemic, really as a just a passion project. My husband and I personally funded the scholarship with no intentions of starting a nonprofit, but after getting positive reception, we started as a nonprofit in 2021. And in our time, things have really taken off well. But really to supplement some of our lack of resources and time and money and people, it was critical that we kind of had another arm to help our nonprofit continue to grow. So I became familiar with the term of skilled volunteerism through our community foundation here in Richmond, Virginia. And so they have an excellent program that they run. But I started to kind of Google and say, hey, are there other platforms that could, put me in touch with the broader range of skilled volunteers, not just specific to my city or region or state? And I was able to stumble upon Taproot, which has been absolutely incredible for our nonprofit as we're working to scale and build our capacity. It's actually become a pretty fundamental and critical part of what we do. Our team is completely volunteer based at this time. So having the opportunity to work with skilled volunteers from the range of marketing professionals to graphic designers and accounting professionals really just helps us to be able to get our mission done well.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you hit on several things that probably a lot of nonprofits watching this are nodding their heads at. Scarcity. There just
Absolutely.
not being a lot of resources out there for nonprofits. But also, I think because Taproot Plus is such a virtual program, you can link up with consultants in New York or
Yep.
like Denver, in Los Angeles, or even in other parts of the world where we operate. So it also gives you access to not just in your geographic location, right, which you hit on. And I know you've done several projects now with skill volunteers that
Yep.
you found on Taproot Plus. Can you maybe highlight a project or two that
Sure.
you want to talk about? What was the end goal? How did it go? What was the impact at your organization? So people on the line or on the webinar can get an idea of okay, what does this actually look like?
Sure. So I'll highlight two projects that have been really beneficial for us. The first is around as we were trying to kind of pivot from just being a scholarship provider as a nonprofit to offering some other areas and strategic pillars. We went through an exercise of evaluating what those programs should look like. And although I do have the MBA, my nonprofit experience is very limited. So I wanted to get some help on figuring out how to go about opening the programs and what that should entail. And so I was able to connect with 2 consultants on Taproot that led our organization through a stakeholder survey. And so that was so critical because they interviewed various groups within the segments, like our students. They interviewed our board. They interviewed some other nonprofits that were doing what we were hoping to do around financial literacy and career readiness. And they were able to take all that data, all the survey results, and really analyze it, sequence it, and put it in a format that was easy for me to digest as the leader, and to find what our program structures and offerings should look like. What would have taken me probably countless hours that I don't have, they were able to do on my behalf. And it was so critical and so helpful. And I also found that they got more honest feedback than I would have, in talking to our students or the participants that we serve. They were able to, have those conversations as consultants that they do on their day-to-day jobs, very, easy for them to handle. And they provided us with great feedback and were able to just do that for us and take so much off of my plate. So that was the first one. And then the second one was really around a marketing activity related to identifying like a brand strategy for our organization. As I mentioned, we started as a grassroots cause. And so as we wanted to really revitalize and revamp how we were showing up in the space, I was able to work with the marketing consultant that helped with the brand identity project, where we worked through target segments and kind of created what target segments is, what key messaging would resonate. We worked on really refining our verbiage and our copy for our websites, as well as other marketing materials. And so, again, what would have cost our nonprofit so much, we were able to get for free, but with professionals' touch. And so it's been absolutely outstanding and has resulted in a lot more donations towards our cause, and again, cost savings for us as a nonprofit.
Yeah. I love that you highlighted kind of stakeholder research and a marketing-based need, because in my experience, those two things end up having a lot to do with each other. And I talk with a lot of nonprofits who are maybe just starting out,
Sure.
and they're like, well, we want to do a crowdfunding campaign or something like that. And, I ask them, like, okay, what leads you to believe that's the best way to raise donations for your organization?
Right.
And sometimes they're like, well, that's what other organizations are doing. And I'm just like, but will that be effective for your stakeholders, for the people that you're pitching? Is that the right way to go in raising funds, in doing a market? Just because it worked for another organization doesn't necessarily mean it might work for yours. So I love the stakeholder analysis, because it gives you an idea of, okay, I have precious marketing bandwidth. I need to be very directed. I don't want to waste this on a whole venture pitching people that just really aren't the stakeholders that we need to even be going for. So oftentimes I love, sometimes your marketing need is just starting out, figuring out, like, okay, who are the best people to pitch? Looking back on, some of your experiences in engaging skill volunteers, is there something that you wish you really knew before engaging with a skill volunteer? What worked well, maybe what didn't, that you can share, kind of give some insights for all the people who are thinking about doing this, that are on the webinar?
Sure. You touched on this earlier, Joshua, when you mentioned about deadlines and, kind of planning for work. And one thing that I would say as you embark on your skilled volunteer journey is to really plan and give yourself a little bit more wiggle room in your plans. The skill volunteers that you meet are great, and they, are happy to help. But a lot of times life can happen, unexpected circumstances that could shift your date. So if you know that you have an upcoming initiative that you want to get planned out or want to get help on, it's very important that you give yourself some wiggle room, just in case, the volunteers of availability changes, or that there's some sort of adjustment in the timelines and schedules. Another thing I would say is around just onboarding with volunteers. They're very interested in kind of understanding your mission, understanding what your nonprofit is all about. And so what I ended up doing, because I kind of kept getting that question as I would onboard new volunteers, is I ended up making a little bit of a PowerPoint deck that outlined some key information that I could use as standard infrastructure to onboard organizations on kind of my perspective on our journey, our leadership team, our structure, what we're trying to accomplish. And I found that to be very, very helpful. And whenever the volunteers get that, I think the projects go a lot better as they're aligned with kind of the overall vision for the nonprofit. And then lastly, I would say, as you're providing that honest and curt feedback, also, shower your volunteer with compliments. One of the things that I found is that some of these volunteers I'll develop great relationships with, and our time together extends to other projects because we develop a great working relationship and they get a lot of benefit and satisfaction out of giving to a great cause. So I think that that could be a great way for you to supplement your team by just developing positive relationships with the volunteers that you work well with and develop a chemistry with, because a lot of times they're interested in going beyond just one project with you.
Yeah, you touched on a lot of things there. Something that's overlooked, I think, sometimes as part of a project management experience with a skilled volunteer is if the project has been good and the work has been really fruitful, like do something to celebrate that, with the volunteer. Sometimes people are like, well, we don't have like a huge budget to give them a gift or something like that. But really, it can just be something as simple as, hey, if you need me to be a reference,
Yep.
For an upcoming opportunity you're applying for, something like that, please put me down as a reference. Like I can attest to your work. It can be as simple as that. Or, maybe if your organization has some branded material, to send them or something like that. But
Absolutely.
Yeah, that celebration piece is important because you never know. We've had skilled volunteers that have gone on to join nonprofits boards. So that's another avenue of pro bono service that is kind of not thought about, but it is kind of a gateway to prospective board members who want to work with your organization. And I love everything you said earlier about, thinking about the timeline and onboarding. Oftentimes where people are like, we need to hit the ground running. We need to just do the work. And it's kind of like way back in school when your teacher was like, no, outline your essay before you do it. And you're like, I don't need an outline. And then you start writing your essay and you're like, okay, maybe I need an outline. That's kind of how I think, back to pro bono as well, is like, we're all nonprofit professionals. We're like, we need to just do the work. But setting everything up for success, I think, saves a lot of pain and heartache down the road, right?
That's critical.
Thorough onboarding. And like I was saying earlier, like taking the time to really think about your need and describe it. Again, it's like, the outlining, but it is ultimately like critical. What we found in our experience is sometimes the actual doing of the execution of the work itself can actually be the shortest part of a project, believe it or not, especially with more technical things like website design and stuff. So that's always been something that's interesting.
Josh, if I can just add on there to that point you were making, I think it is so critical that you do the onboarding and you have a clearly defined scope as a project of what you're desiring, and in your onboarding, share that with the consultants, because it's a fine balance and very delicate on like what you may propose and then what a consultant or professional may come in and with a different perspective and wider lens route you a different way. Because as an example, in what I shared earlier about the surveying project we worked on, my initial thoughts for the project was, hey, I just want a mission and vision statement refined. But they led me to, hey, we need to survey, your audience and stakeholders and get feedback before you go down that path. And so it was very collaborative in discovering what we actually needed. So I wholeheartedly agree with what you shared there.
Yeah. And, like you said, there are unknown unknowns. Like you might not know that they're the subject matter expert. They have like a lot of insight. They're like, well, have you considered this? And you're like, oh, well, that kind of changes the shape of the project. Like Diana saying in the chat, I don't know what I don't know.
Exactly.
And so when you're having the initial conversation with them, you're like, the way you're your need kind of is shaped, all of a sudden changes. Or maybe you're like, oh, we actually have a different project than we initially thought. We have to go back to the drawing board. Do you have any other, insights or things that you learned that you're like, hey, if you're going to do this, like, think about this, or things that you kind of want to share that you haven't already?
Yeah, I think overall, what I would say as a nonprofit leader, this skilled volunteerism has become a very critical part of what we do now. I'm so thankful to have the opportunity to work with agencies and professionals that I probably would never have the opportunity to work with had we be required to pay for them at this time in our organization's journey. So it's very beneficial, and Taproot didn't pay me to say that. Like, we are, experiencing all the benefit of working with different professionals, and it's been such an enhancement for our organization. Most volunteers are excellent, very eager to help. Subject matter experts, and the relationship, as I mentioned, can continue as you develop that partnership. So I wholeheartedly recommend it. I've had nothing but positive experiences for the most part.
Yeah, and you are doing pro bono right now, by speaking with us, in a way as well. Well, I know, I wish we could talk more, because like I said, nonprofits usually express everything, even better than we can. But I do want to jump into, okay, like how can organizations do kind of what you did? So thank you so much, Kristen, for being here. And for
Absolutely.
everyone on the call, we'll send you all a follow-up with some more information about how to get in contact with us with the recording. We'll also just link Kristen's LinkedIn information there if you want to find out more about her, career trajectory and KR Scholars. You'll be able to do that as well. So keep a lookout for that. Big thank you, Kristen, for joining us today. Well, I know, like I said, I wish we could talk to nonprofit guests even more, but I do want to talk about, okay, you've heard all these great things about what skill volunteerism is in, what it looks like. So how can you start doing it yourself? So I've talked a little bit about our online program, Taproot Plus. We designed Taproot Plus to try and be flexible and nimble, so any nonprofit can get skill volunteer support no matter how big they are, and how many business professionals or any business professional can support that nonprofit no matter where they're located. And again, this is a completely free to use resource. So you should see a ribbon up at the top of the page. If maybe you've already signed up for Taproot Plus or already know a little bit about it, but if you haven't, I highly recommend going in there and poking around and creating an account for your nonprofit. Important to note, Taproot Plus is currently open to registered nonprofits, public schools, and fiscally sponsored social good organizations across the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, the European Union, and India. So we are trying to expand our geographic reach as much as possible. But believe it or not, there are legal hurdles we have to clear to open a volunteer marketplace virtually in a foreign overseas market. So we are trying to expand. So if you're not in one of those areas that we serve, keep checking back because we are trying to expand as much as possible. There's no limit to the amount of staff members at your organization who can have an account on Taproot Plus. So later when we send out the recording to all registrants or, the follow-up information, feel free to forward that to other colleagues who might want to take a look at it. Taproot is a nonprofit that exists to assist other nonprofits. The only cost, again, associated with our programs is time and energy that it takes to request and manage skilled volunteers. So some people at this point ask, okay, where's the asterisk or like fine print or kind of hidden caveat, somewhere? Is there a fee for posting or anything like that? We are as pursuant to our mission, we are trying to enable pro bono support, on a completely pro bono basis. So I want to touch on the two different types of program opportunities you could get started on through Taproot Plus. There's actually two different routes you could go. And you could use both of these at the same time or mix and match. but those are projects and what we call sessions. So projects are multi-week long engagements where you and a skilled volunteer are working together to complete, in project management speak, what we call a deliverable, some kind of finished product. It might be a very discrete and easy to describe finished product, like we want to overhaul the UX or UI of our WordPress website. Or we have, the sessions way you want to go, which is a 1 hour, one-off consultative opportunity. So these are where you can post opportunities requesting just a consultation session, usually to answer a core question or particular challenge during a 1 hour call with the subject matter expert, where you can kind of pick their brain. So if you create a Taproot Plus account, you'll see immediately the first thing that it'll say, do you want to post a session? Do you want to post a project? So think about what your need might be. And I want to just kind of go over kind of how to pitch a project and how to pitch a session, so you can kind of get the most out of the skilled volunteer engagement. So again, projects are multi-week long engagements. And the goal of Taproot Plus is really giving you a space where you can pitch your project. So if you select this option, you'll see basically a 3-part kind of free answer page where we'll ask you to make your pitch for the project. And I want to just arm you with some basic principles for thinking about how to pitch your project, keeping in mind our principles for the 5 principles of good pro bono and everything Kristen was talking about as well. The first thing we're going to ask you when you're pitching your project is to describe simply what you want the skilled volunteer to complete. I think here you can just dive right into the deliverable or final goal of the project that you're looking to get help with. Remember that your nonprofit's mission and vision is going to be posted along with your website with every project that's posted. So it's perfectly fine to just go jump right into the deliverable that you're looking to complete, and kind of describe, okay, what do we not have right now that we want to have at the end of that project? Then we're going to ask you to create an actual kind of motivational pitch to attract volunteers to your project. So say how that deliverable is going to help further the mission of your organization. How does doing stakeholder research help end homelessness in Seattle? Or whatever your nonprofit's mission might be. Connect that deliverable back to the mission, because more likely than not, the skilled volunteer is reaching out with interest because they're motivated by your mission. They want to know how their work is going to help further your nonprofit's mission. And then finally, we'll ask you, what preparations have you made for this project? How do you plan to actually implement the project once it's complete? So talk a little bit about the prep work that's been done as it pertains to this project. Skilled volunteers and business professionals, they're very detail oriented. They're going to want to know what they have to work with. What's going to happen is we'll take kind of these 3 free answer questions, and they get compiled into your project pitch that we boost out on our marketplace to get interested skilled volunteers to apply to your project. So Taproot Plus is really centered around sourcing. We want to get you candidates in the door so that you can actually then, through Taproot Plus, set up a time to talk with them and kind of have an initial interview to see if they're a good fit, if you like their skills and experience, but also to see if they are that culture fit. Again, going back to the recommendations Kristen was talking about and our core principles of good pro bono. So that's an opportunity for you to both interview each other, really. They're trying to get more information about your need. It's a good place to discuss the timeline. If you interview someone and you don't think they might be a good fit, that's perfectly fine. You're not locked in. There's an option where you can decline them, and we'll even send them a nicely worded letter. And you can also personalize that letter if you want, thanking them for their time and that you're going to through a different direction. So that's kind of the basic process for posting a project to Taproot Plus. I also just want to touch briefly on how to craft a really good pitch for sessions, those 1 hour consultative engagements. So the advice I give here is you really want to try and focus the session around probably a core question or curiosity that centers around one skill set. You want to keep in mind also that an hour can go by really quickly. So, you want to keep it focused around kind of one core thing that you're really trying to touch on. The person that you link up with is going to, hear about your interest and a little bit about your organization. And again, an hour can go by quickly. Sometimes, consultants will kind of go over if they're really enthused and like want to stay on to help you. Sometimes these session calls can also turn into projects. So if you're ever in that situation where they're like, well, I would actually like to spend more time with your organization and help you complete a deliverable, you could reach out to our help desk and we can make sure that that session gets turned into a project for you, so it's actually logged in the system. So again, you want to clarify the goal of the call. What do you not know right now that you want to know after the call? And keep in mind that these are mostly consultative. So if you want a skilled volunteer to actually work with you to create something, that's more likely a project need. If you just want advice or brainstorming, diagnosing, or even scoping out a potential project, the session might be the best way to go. But if you're looking to get a deliverable finished, the projects option is going to be the best way to go. You'll notice that when you pitch a session, we only ask you really for the skill category you're looking for and kind of a brief paragraph summary of what you want to talk about. So it's not as extensive as that project pitch that we're asking you to make. But the process is similar. We're going to take that sessions pitch and boost it out on our marketplace and get skilled volunteers interested. You can actually have up to 5 consultative sessions with a skilled volunteer about one topic. So you can say, hey, I want to keep this session open for other skilled volunteers to apply to. I want a second opinion. So that is also something that you can do as well. You can accept up to 5 skilled volunteers per session. So that is some just basics about how to craft a really good pitch when you get to that point on Taproot Plus. And so now I just want to briefly make it a little more concrete for you all by linking you up with examples of actual projects that are common in the skill areas we work in. But I want to also just briefly point out something special, which is April is a month of service. So it is the Global Volunteer Month, which is a celebration that's led by our friends at an organization called Points of Light. April is an annual celebration of the impact of volunteerism and a call for us all to give back to our communities. So it culminates in National Volunteer Week, which starts in a few days on April 21st. So during National Volunteer Week, there will be additional attention on your Taproot volunteer listings as we run special events for volunteers during the week. So make sure, if you're interested, to get your requests submitted in the next few days or so to really take advantage of that extra volunteer attention during April. So Taproot Plus, really focuses on getting your need out there in front of skilled volunteers and encouraging them to apply. We run a lot of volunteer-specific events during National Volunteer Week, and we drive a lot of nonprofit engagement. So now is kind of the perfect time to strike while the iron's hot if you have a need that you want to post on Taproot Plus. Now, like I said, there are certain skill areas that Taproot Plus specializes in. One of those areas is marketing and communications, Marcom. And here is just a list of opportunities that are very common types of project opportunities that are posted under the marketing and communications bucket. This is not an exhaustive list, but this is just an example of the types of projects that you can get help on to help this make it a little more concrete. So we need help with our brand style guide, across our organization to make sure that our font and our logos are being used correctly on all our marketing material. We need graphic design assistance to update some marketing collaterals and infographics we're using for a new social media campaign we're doing. Maybe you need help crafting a social media content calendar with a social media strategist. Or maybe like you were talking about with Kristen's project, key messages development. What type of messaging are we using to which stakeholders we're talking to? We're going to talk to potential program beneficiaries differently than the way we talk to funders. How are we going to do that? That's just a smattering of examples of different types of marketing communications projects that you could post to Taproot Plus. The next area that we work in is business strategy and finance. So this spans a ton of different things, from creating your first chart of accounts if you're getting a budget up off the ground, to more technical things with, hey, we have QuickBooks and we need some pointers in how to set up a chart of accounts in QuickBooks. A lot of skilled volunteers can help you set things up in QuickBooks for the first time. Or maybe you're developing your case for support for pitch meetings you're going to go into with potential funders, and you want to figure out the best way to make that pitch from a business perspective. That's a bit more of a strategic type of business strategy and finance project you could get help with. But you can also get help with technical things like financial audits as well. Those are pretty common from nonprofits on our marketplace too. So again, not an exhaustive list, but just to link you up with some basic ideas of what other nonprofits have gotten support in. The third area we work in is information technology, IT. So here you can see everything from partnering with someone to figure out how to set up your Office 365 presence or Google Suite setup that you're going to manage all your documents across your organization with. Website design and development. You want to update the UX or UI of your website. You can work with a developer or a website designer to do that. Even things like video editing. Let's say you've got a lot of raw footage from a recent event that you want to try and compile into like a 1 minute to 90-second promo video with nice captions and graphics and things like that. You could get help from a video editor. Another big popular area of support is Salesforce or CRM setup. Maybe you're using HubSpot or Razor's Edge as well, or another type of CRM. But we have a lot of people who work with CRMs on Taproot Plus as well. So that's also something you might want to consider for when you get to that stage when you're using a CRM at your organization. And then finally, human resources and leadership development. So you could potentially help get assistance crafting your organizational chart for the first time. Maybe the organization has grown and you need to update your org chart. A lot of times people don't consider board and volunteer management HR needs, but they definitely are. So maybe you need to talk with someone who can help you create personas for the types of board members that you're trying to recruit and help you map out a recruitment strategy for prospective board members. How do you make the approach? Where do you go to find prospective board members? Again, volunteer management is as well. If you're setting up your first volunteer program, there's a lot of HR people who can help you figure out how to run that program for the first time, what systems need to be in place. And then finally, something like an employee handbook. Maybe your organization has expanded and you want to make sure all of your organization's policies and procedures are well documented in one place. You could get help with something really technical like that. So that's just a smattering of different needs that you could get done on Taproot Plus. Again, we do specialize in those kind of 4 main broad category areas. We know pro bono is very associated with the legal field. Legal is actually one of the areas of pro bono we do not facilitate because we think our partners in the legal field already do that very, very well. So we always have some partners that we can refer you to for legal support. But those 4 main areas of human resources and leadership development, marketing communications, business strategy and finance, and information technology. If you have a need that falls in one of those brackets, you could potentially post it to Taproot Plus. Now, as promised, I do want to leave us a few minutes here at the end for questions. I know we've had a jam-packed session here, so if you have to jump, by all means, we want to thank you for your time and respect your time. But I do want to try and answer questions that have come in, during the duration of our presentation. on air, and we will be keeping a record of the chat. So if for some reason we miss you, we are going to be reviewing the chat just to make sure that we follow up with everyone. We are also going to send you a follow-up email directly. So in particular, if you maybe already posted an opportunity to the marketplace that you have questions about, or you're like, I haven't gotten any hits yet, or I don't know if my post went through or something like that, I'd like to take some time to get eyes on that directly. So reach out to us when we send that follow-up. So our marketing team can get you in contact with me. We might be able to jump on a call, or I can actually get eyes on your situation specifically. But right now I want to use the remaining time just to go over some kind of general questions that people have submitted. And we'll try and make it at a point to follow up with you when we send out this recording in that follow-up email. So we have a good question about eligibility. To get help, the organization would have to be incorporated. Yeah, so in terms of eligibility, we are open for nonprofits in the United States who are 501c3 or are fiscally sponsored by a 501c3. So we need written confirmation of fiscal sponsorship. We are also available for public institutions like schools or libraries or things like that. So keep that in mind as well. If you are located in Canada or the UK or India or the EU, we have a special sign-up flow for that. So we make those determinations on a case-by-case basis. So a lot of different countries have different registration numbers and things like that that are different from the 501c3 process in the United States. So definitely, if you are in one of those areas, you can still apply for support. We might ask you for some clarifying information, but in terms of the United States, it's 501c3 organizations that are fiscally sponsored and publicly run institutions. So that's our kind of baseline for eligibility. I know there's somebody who's saying that they tried to post an opportunity to the site, but for some reason it's not going through. What I'd recommend is if you post a project, you should get an email and a landing page that tells you that the project went through. If you don't see that, definitely immediately reach out to our help desk. You can find the help desk widget on the lower right-hand corner of every page on Taproot Plus and send us an email directly. You can also reply directly to the email that we send you out to follow up. So I can actually help figure out what's going on with that project post and make sure it's actually going through. Sometimes there are like browser issues or like cookies or things like that that mess with our users' ability to post that could be interfering with that. But I would need to get eyes on that myself. And there's another person saying that they've used Taproot 4 for a different nonprofit, which has closed its doors since then. They're interested, if they can update that or if they want to start new. I'd recommend just creating a new profile for that nonprofit. If you want to use the same email address you used to sign up, let us know again at that help desk that you want to sunset that older account but use that same email address for your new account, because we can't use duplicate emails per account. But what we can do is just close that older account for you and close out that email address. And then you can launch your new account as a new nonprofit. So I'd recommend just starting fresh and creating a new organization profile for that. But again, if you want to use the same email that you were using, let us know and we can just close out that account for you, so you can continue to use that email, because our system won't let you use the same email for multiple accounts. Another person asked a really good question that they weren't able to get back in touch with a volunteer that reached out to them within the allotted time frame, but they still want to get in touch with that person. Yes, you could definitely still get in touch with that person. If you go to either the project or session management page directly and scroll down, if a Skill Volunteers inquiry has timed out, you'll actually see the option, if you scroll down under your project description or session description, to re-engage that volunteer. So you can send them a list of times that you are available and send them a note saying you are interested in getting in touch with them. You should also get their email address when they apply. So you can send them a email contact directly as well, saying, hey, I am interested in getting in touch with you. If you ever have any trouble getting back in contact with a volunteer, or maybe you weren't able to kind of keep up with the inquiries, again, you can also reach out to our help desk and say, hey, I'm having trouble getting back in touch with this volunteer. I want them to know that I'm still interested in working with them. We can also help kind of smooth any communications issues as well that come down the pipeline. Yeah, I'm going through all the questions. I know we're a little over time. But again, I want to thank everyone for their time today. If you have any more questions, please let us know in response to our follow-up. And they can also help send you to me. If you have a specific project or something that you want me to take a look at, I can definitely help there as well. Or again, if you have like a technical issue or something like that, our help desk is always available, that you can reach out to here at help@taprootplus.org, or use that widget at the lower right-hand corner of any page on Taproot Plus to shoot us an email there. So that's the other place. If you're like me and you think of really brilliant questions at like 1 a.m., like, the night after, you'll be able to get in touch with us somehow. So you can shoot us a message. But I want to thank you all for just being here today and hearing a little bit about Taproot Foundation and Taproot Plus. And, I'm really glad that we were able to have a nonprofit to give you more information about how to best utilize something like this. And we want to thank you so much for your time. And we hope to see you all online sometime in the near future. And again, get those opportunities up for Nonprofit Volunteer Week, the week of April 21st. We hope to see you online sometime. Have a good one.